a pal of ours, Bruce Powe. He's a professor of communications at York University, and he wants to talk to you about Marshall McLuhan. You got 7 minutes.
This is going to be Marshall McLuhan and Hyperspeed, so that we're going to be doing discontinuous talk as fast as I can. So if I get faster as I'm moving along, it's because I want to get as much as I can into this. So it's McLuhan in a gasp, in a spasm, as it were, in evolutionary hyperdrive. I'm going to try and ask who was he, try to answer who was he, answer something about the McLuhan apocalypse. So the next one, please. And look at some of his most famous aphorisms, and then look at McLuhan the prophet, which is to look at the neuro-romanticism that is coming about in his heralded acknowledgement that the medium is the massage. What did he mean by apocalypse? In 1977, he was asked to summarize the 21st century in one word, and he said apocalypse. He did not mean Armageddon and the end of the world. He meant open your hearts, open your arms, open your hands, open your eyes, open your mind. That there was a new dawn, there was a new age coming about, a second creation brought about by electronic media, which had extended the psyche and consciousness into a world embrace. He also said that we had crossed the energy threshold, which meant that we were now in a new realm of electricity, of charge. In fact, that our world was wired up and wireless. But remember that he was saying this in 1959 and 1960, way ahead of what most people were saying at the time. I want to begin then asking quite quickly who was he, with some serious laughter. I was a student of his in the last class he gave. There were only 6 of us, and at that time he always liked to begin with a joke. Here's the joke that he told at that time in our first class. 2 goats are out in a field munching on a piece of film. One goat, the piece of film happens to be gone with the wind. One goat turns to the other and says, "What do you think?" And the other goat says, "I like the book better." McLuhan read books. He was a conservative Catholic, born in Alberta, a Catholic convert. In fact, his family was Methodist and Presbyterian. He educated at Cambridge in the 1930s. His teachers were F.R. Leavis and Wittgenstein and I.A. Richards. He eventually ended up in Toronto, the University of Toronto, in 1946. His first meeting at the Department of English that day was none other than Northrop Frye, who would have been his colleague for the next 34 years. He was an English professor for 34 years. He was never a mass communications professor. And in fact, there was no such thing. He invented it. He was only out of Canada for a brief period at Fordham University in New York City in the 1970s. He struggled with ill health almost all his life, strokes, aneurysms, and including many cases, mild cases of epilepsy. From 1962 to 1970, he was the media guru. He was the man who heralded the TV age. Alphabetic culture shifting to digital culture. Again, think of the time, 1962. And to say this today is to say a truism, but to say it at that time was to risk enormous controversy. Anthony Burgess said about him at the time that he was the greatest Canadian that the United States ever produced. He spoke in aphorisms, he spoke in gnomic phrases, and he did it deliberately to antagonize and provoke. And many of his students to this day are part of our cultural landscape. Margaret Atwood, for example, was one of his students, as was Bob Ray and R. Murray Schafer, and of course myself. He was a classics scholar, a PhD in grammar and rhetoric, not in media again. But through that PhD thesis, he looked at Gnosticism, Hermeticism, alchemy, and Kabbalah. The world is a text to be read. Alchemy, everything is transformed by the media that we use. Gnosticism, user is content. You are the content as long as you are using it. You are the music while the music lasts. And Hermetic wisdom, everything is connected, everything is interfused, everything is influenced by everything else. What he did that was so remarkable was to take the old, the ancient wisdom, and to look at the new, that is technology and electronic technology in particular. He was also a family man, 6 children, a set of twins as well. To keep in mind this, for McLuhan, the universe is a vast, resonating, cosmic vibration. The cosmos is reverberating, calling, thundering. And what electronic media was the second nature, the second creation, a big bang in which human technology was reverberating, calling, vibrating back. There was the book of nature, trees, rivers, mountains, And then there is the book of technology, the hypertext of technology, TV, media, radio, computers. In other words, to paraphrase and revise William Blake, Marshall McLuhan would have said, "A fool sees not the same TV that a wise man sees." Technology had completely changed our sensorium and our interconnections with one another. Forms can be natural, they can be alphabetic, they can be technological, mechanical, and they can also be electronic. Forms are frames, that is to say, the medium is the message, means that the context, the environment of our cosmos alters us before we even know that that's happening. Now, how did he do it? How did he see all this? A conservative Catholic from Alberta who didn't really watch TV, never had his driver's license, very much a family man, because he did not judge. He removed judgment from his perception. And as a result of that, most of us have an overpowering urge to editorialize, make an opinion, try and decide whether this is good or bad. He removed that side of the equation and looked at things as clearly as he could. He did so through the lens of the ancient wisdom. And so many of his insights and his profound understandings of things are said in some of these aphorisms that I have on the board behind me. See, I'm still thinking as a university professor. It's a board behind me. I'm usually low tech. I don't usually use this sort of thing. Medium is the message, massage, alchemy. All forms and media transform us. User is content. That is, all knowledge comes through you and you and you in terms of interpretation. Electric media extend the human nervous system. This is a hermetic wisdom that all things interfuse and interpenetrate and join with one another, that there is a vast mutuality going on. The other interesting thing about the idea of technology as extension is that extension means growth, entanglement, complexity, and involvement. To see technology as imposition is to see it as alienation. And you can see how McLuhan was extending his humanist concerns that technology, in fact, was the greatest of human inventions, that there was nothing to fear if we understood what it was that was going on. And of course, perhaps his most famous statement under the media is the message, the global theater, which he revised in 1970 as global village as global theater, that all images and experiences are texts that can be read. From the ancient wisdom to hieroglyph. You can see he began with the idea that humankind is at the center of the cosmos. He moved ahead to the Renaissance notion that, in fact, all consciousness is awareness. He moved to the William Blake notion that if we opened ourselves, opened our minds, apocalyptic, opened our hearts, that we would see with the great global embrace that we now have through the new sphere of electronic consciousness, that a new society is evolving, the hieroglyphic. Did McLuhan like it? Privately? Probably not. But he was able to remove himself from that and with profound prophetic insight be able to see things that in 2010 now seem obvious to most of us. Second creation is electronica, and we are riding the electronic waves and primed by the fire of the energy of the cosmos itself. Remember that we are mainlining energy itself through electricity, and so that the great challenge of our next age and is the neuroromanticism that I've been suggesting would come up next, please. Which is exhaustions of hypermodernism, and that's as fast as I can go, is to say there's a new age.
Bruce, why are you so wound up about McLuhan? Why are you so wound up about him now?
I'm so wound up about him because he is, in Europe, the best-known Canadian visionary. He is a word in the French dictionary. Whenever you speak in Europe, which I've just done recently in Barcelona, Rome, Naples, and Bologna, he is considered the Canadian visionary. And strangely enough, our own recognition of him has been so slow, and that we still do not study him as being one of the great figures of the Canadian intellectual tradition. Of course, he influenced us both, marked us both.
Thank you. Thanks
You're
for
welcome.
that. Yep.